So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this faculty development session on the music of Arvo Pärt. And I'm delighted to be able to welcome Dr. Jason Tramm joining us today. This is part of our first annual Contemplation Week at Seton Hall University. And so I'm going to hand the stage over, if you will, to Jason, so he can tell you all about this wonderful composer and his music, and lead us through an hour of fabulous listening.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, and it's an honor to be asked, and I'm really excited to talk about one of my favorite composers. And to give you an idea of the import of this composer, I was looking and doing my research, and I knew that he was one of the greatest living composers. He's in his 80s. I think he's like 82 right now. But to give you an idea of the import of his music, from 2011 to 2018, he was considered the most performed living composer in the world. Let that sink in the world. He was supplanted in 2019 by, anyone have a guess? If anyone has a guess, feel free to chime in. I love to hear comments. I always have my students talking during the class and going back and forth. Any guesses on who was the most performed in 2019? John Williams of Star Wars fame. I mean, that's the level of this composer, okay? And if you haven't heard his music before, I think that you're in for a rare treat. This is someone who not only has made a incredible impact on me as a musician, but during this year of COVID, where things have been so challenging for all of us, with so much societal noise, with so much political noise, with so many things we've had to adapt to as educators online and technology and things like that, whenever I've needed, this is a really crazy year for me with my going up for tenure, and just I needed time to focus myself and to do a lot of writing. I would sit down, I would listen to Arvo Pärt, and all would seem well. All would come together for me. This is a musician of rare power, of incredible emotive power, and the term minimalism is very interesting. It's really obvious on the surface. It's just minimal musical elements, right? But there's much more to his music than meets the eye. And you're going to see a lot in common with a composer like Beethoven, who took the simplest musical elements and through genius compositional devices, turned them into much more than the sum of their parts. Like da 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 is not a theme, that's two intervals, but turned that into the Fifth Symphony, which is typical of Beethoven. You're going to see a similar compositional craft in Arvo Pärt, I hope. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you, and then we're going to spend, I'm not going to lecture at you, I promise, too much. I've tried to keep it like 50-50 listening and a little bit of talking and discussion. It's important to put everything into context of who these people are, and then it'll make the music make sense. So Arvo Pärt is considered Estonia's greatest export, which I find pretty interesting as well. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Go. Is that coming across on the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so there's Touching the Infinite, exploring the sacred minimalism of Arvo Pärt. When Mary asked me to come up with something meditative about music, I immediately jumped, like with 2 seconds later, and I came up with this, because I've used his music so much for this purpose this year. I've included a bunch of Arvo Pärt quotes because he's a real mystic. So a quote like, "That is my goal. Time and timelessness are connected." A lot of his work deals with the infinite. It deals with combinations and recombinations of very simple elements, but constantly changing, but almost imperceptibly. And another quote is, "Silence is the pause in me when I am near God." Arvo Pärt's faith is very important to his compositional output. And why don't we dig in? We'll start there. Maestro Pärt was born in 1935 in Estonia, and during his life, he grew up with his mother and his stepmother in Estonia, and he was a musical child. He remembers at a young age that he had a piano at home. They didn't have a lot of money, and the piano was broken in the middle. So he had the low and the high, and he would play often a melody on the low and a melody on the high. And you're going to hear that kind of cross over into his music as time goes on. He was a very musical child. He went into military service, and then he went into the conservatory in Tallinn, which is the capital city. And it was said that when he would shake his hands, music notes would fall out. So he was a gifted composer from the beginning. He was recognized by his peers. He won a major national competition. And of course, that the system then was Soviet, under fierce Soviet control in Estonia, behind the Iron Curtain when he was growing up. And his first pieces were successful and lauded and put all over the concert halls of his native country. He had very little access to music of the outside, except for some stolen tapes and reels and scores that were smuggled in from the West. So he had some access, but not a lot to Western innovation and kind of, during his training. He started writing in a serial or an atonal style similar to Arnold Schoenberg. And he was actually the first composer from Estonia to write in this style, which is highly chromatic and not very pleasant to the ears. I'm not going to play any of that music today because that's not what he's known for. But let's put it out there that the Soviet authorities and the Estonian musical, the intelligentsia didn't know what to do with it. So quickly, he went from being a rising star to being outcast. And his music stopped being played in the concert hall. And he found himself at a crisis of his faith and of his art. So for about 8 years, he didn't write a single note. He stopped writing entirely. The atonal or serial compositional methods, which are highly controlled and very much in depth and system driven, almost mathematical, they were a dead end for him. And he had to find a new way. The new way for Arvo Pärt, and the quote here is, I had to get rid of everything unnecessary in order to save myself. He was also having a crisis of his faith, and he converted from Lutheranism to Eastern Orthodox and became incredibly connected to his religion. And you're going to hear that. During his time away from music, from composing, he delved into the earliest polyphony, the Notre Dame polyphony of the 1100s, with the first, and that sound made an indelible mark on him. And he started to explore that, and he started to explore this new avenue, which we're going to listen to first today. Very important image. I really like this one with the bell because he's most known for the compositional approach that he titled tintinnabuli, okay? Tintinnabuli and the Cantus in Memoriam Benjamin Britten. In the 1970s, his new style emerged and has taken over the world, has hit the musical world and has gone way, way beyond the classical music sphere. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was watching Game of Thrones, and you heard this minimalist cello line in the background, and I said, that's Arvo Pärt. Arvo Pärt. Now, it wasn't exactly Arvo Pärt, but it was Arvo Pärt's style being reimagined into popular culture. His music has transformed. It's been used in movies. It's been copied by everybody in Hollywood, and it's become this incredibly influential style. In fact, Steve Reich, one of the most famous American minimalists, he said he marvels that Arvo Pärt has never been in the zeitgeist. He's not even close. He's his own unique person, kind of writing in the wilderness, but he's become so incredibly popular that it's kind of a miracle. And his music is really totally independent. So he's going to come back to music after the serial atonal approach, and he's going to come back with tonality returned, with major minor returned, but in a totally new and original way. So this is his notes about this piece, the Cantus in Memoriam Benjamin Britten. Why did the date of Benjamin Britten's death, December 4th, 1976, touch such a chord in me? During this time, I was obviously at the point where I could recognize the magnitude of such a loss. Inexplicable feelings of guilt, more than even that rose in me. I had just discovered Britten for myself. Just before his death, I began to appreciate the unusual purity of his music. I had the impression of the same kind of purity of the ballads of Guillaume de Machaut from that period I was talking about. And besides, for a long time, I had wanted to meet Britten personally, and now it would not come to that. So exploring this the newfound innovation of his called tintinnabuli, I'm going to give you a couple points of style. We're going to listen to this piece, which is about 6 minutes long, And here's where minimalism, you're going to start noticing what minimalism is. You may know the American minimalists of Philip Glass, Stephen Reich, John Adams, or some of the great ones. And I did a lot of my doctoral research on John Adams, the composer, the living composer. And it's really incredible stuff. It seems on the surface to be just the same thing over and over again. But once you delve below the surface, there's incredibly complex relationships governing the music. So I'm gonna play a YouTube clip of this whole piece of music. And I also found that you can either you can close your eyes and just let this music wash over you, which is a very good thing to do. I do it sometimes myself. Or you can read along with the score if you're musically inclined and you want to follow along. And you can see some of what I'm going to talk about in action because it's very graphic and you can see the notes as they move. This piece is written for bell, like ding, and it's a pitched A. It's written for strings. And now the violins are gonna move the quickest. You're gonna see combinations of long, short, long, short, long, short, long. Okay, and then in the violin twos, they're gonna play that half as slow. Long, short, long, short. And then as we go down, it's gonna be even longer. And then the cellos, even longer. The note lengths double. And those patterns double all the way down to the basses. The basses are going to play it in very long notes. So you're gonna follow along. What that does is it creates an incredible complexity. He's only going to use 8 notes in this piece, and they are ton, 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 ton. That's all you're going to hear for the pitch set he's going to touch. There's no accidentals, and there's no harmony per se. There's no chord progressions like we are so fond of in Western music. Everything is like stasis. It's like a moment trapped in time. And he uses these mathematical loops over and over again in different ways using that material. But we call this a canon. This is a mensural canon. So it's a canon of different time lengths. Now, if you didn't know that and you just listened to the piece of music, I still think it's incredible. A great composer can take really complex musical topics and make them organic and beautiful without actually hearing that in action. So either way, follow along. And then I'm going to talk a little about what tintinnabuli is. It's embedded in his musical style. I will stop yapping and we'll listen to some great music. Here we go. Let me blow up the screen. Hope the gods of technology are kind. Whoops, I forgot to enable the sound. I do every day. Here we go. Right off the bat, if you can see on the page before we start, there's a bell that goes 1, 2, 3, ding. Then is 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, ding. So there's there's short, long, short, long, even in the rests. So everything is thought out mathematically in advance. Hey. Ends with that bell chiming away. Wow. A really brave composer and takes incredible risks. It's such a profound piece of music. And I always tell my students, feel free to use adjectives when describing music like that. Sometimes the adjectives are much more powerful than the musical terms could ever be. So a couple points in there. He's borrowing from ancient music. This descending scale pattern is a symbol of sadness, okay? It's this descending tetrachord of sadness. It's just 8 simple notes, no accidentals. There's no chord progression. So everything we've come to expect in Western music is kind of thrown on its head. There's no sense of tonal, we don't get a change of harmony, we don't get a change of key. It's all one idea, but yet it holds together magnificently, and it's complex and in a really visceral way because he keeps changing the same patterns over and over again, almost mathematically, and all the lower voices do it, but much later and much slower. So it's this kind of cascading figure, and still to me speaks of incredible sadness and emotion. And I always feel like I'm touching the infinite with him. I feel like I could just sit there for another hour and listen to that music happen. And some of his earlier music was really austere. It took him a while to make some of these masterworks you're going to hear today. These are some of his earliest tintinnabuli masterworks. Now, the word tintinnabuli reminded him, it means the ringing of bells. That's all it means. And in it, there's always a triad, a major or minor triad going dun, 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 dun. That triad's always happening, okay? And he makes some comments like, the complicated only confuse me. He loves to make comments like that, even though he's this brilliant mind. So basically, there's always an A minor triad sounding while that music happens. And then another voice is paired with it that moves in scale patterns. Okay, the scale patterns are symbolic of our human condition. While the arpeggio in the other voice, it only plays in arpeggios, becomes dissonant with that. That's like the angels, or it's like God with them at all times. So these things are never, they're always together and they're paired in this piece. I'm going to show you a very simple version of that he used in another piece of his. This is the first piece where he explored this style that was going to make him very, very famous. I'm going to share again, back to my PowerPoint. And thank you for bearing with me. Here we go. Come on. I'm going to try again. Sometimes Teams doesn't like to listen to me. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we have the bells. This is Für Alina, for Alina. The silence must be longer. The music is about the silence. The sounds are there to surround the silence. Für Alina was written in 1976 for a family friend. It was a family that was going through a divorce, and Alina, Arvo Pärt and his 2 children and his wife, he's been married his whole entire career and has a wonderful relationship with his wife, and he talks about often in his interviews, and that means a lot to him, his family. And he was in Germany. He left, he was granted to leave in the 80s, and he moved to Vienna and then to Berlin. And he split his time, and he eventually moved back to Estonia after the fall of communism. When he was in Germany, he was a close family friend were going through a divorce, and the daughter was Alina, who left Germany to live with the father in England. And he wrote this piece as a consolation to the mother. Now, it's for piano, and it's the simplest piece of music. There is no rhythm, really. You're going to see, I'm going to show you the notated score. There's no rhythm, and I've heard versions of this that go on for 20 minutes. This one's going to go on for about 5, but the one I like the most goes on for about 20 minutes. And you're going to see very clearly this is in B minor, and either just listen with your eyes closed or follow along the score if you're musically inclined to do that. But look, the left hand's going to play just the notes of a B minor triad, B, D, F sharp, in different ways, and the right hand's going to be all the notes in that B minor alien scale against that. And once in a while, there's going to be variety by playing a deep low note. He doesn't have to use a lot of complicated devices to make his music felt. Let's see what that sounds like. I have to reshare on the new one. Here we go. Für Alina. This is the first of his tintinnabuli pieces. I have to find it for you. Where's my link? Here we go. Thank you to all these people on YouTube who put the score up there with it. It's such a nice thing to do for all of us musicians, and we all appreciate that. Here we go. Gotta blow it up so we can all see it. Ruhig, erhaben, in sich hineinhorchend. Peaceful, but like in a grand way or something close to that. So here we go. The version I listened to a lot, the live performance, it goes on for about 20 minutes. It's really beautiful. I just like the fact that we can see the score. You can see the parts move. That has its basis in the earliest polyphony of the Roman Catholic Church. There's a little bit actually, I hear a lot of Gregorian chant. I hear a lot of early organum in there. So he's hearkening back to a style, kind of borrowing but reimagining in a totally unique and modern way, which is his genius. I mean, that's not a piece that you think would fire up people's imagination today, but in such a loud and noisy world where there's so much dissonance, sometimes to step back into time, I can literally put this on and start working and just kind of get lost in the music, just get lost in the repetition and get lost in the mystery. Couple of points of style. He keeps the low note held down on the piano, so you hear all the overtones ringing in between. That's part of the music. In this piece, he even removes rhythm. There's no written rhythm, really, just long notes and short notes, just like Gregorian chant notation. So here he's reimagining everything. Now, that was his earliest piece using the style. He's adapted it in so many different ways. The second voice of tintinnabuli can be used in many different ways to have many. It's like just a tool he uses. It's not all he does. I'm going to show you a couple other pieces. This next one is his most famous piece, and I love the title, Spiegel im Spiegel, or Mirror in the Mirror. I just love that. I just think it's so beautiful, and it's so typical of his imagery. Let me share that with you. I hope this can just zip over here. Is my PowerPoint sharing, or do I have to reshare? Good. Okay, good. Very serious looking, but he's usually smiling when I see pictures of him. Here's Spiegel im Spiegel, 1978. So he's been experimenting with the style for 4 years now, or a couple of years, and he's written a huge outpouring of music. He's been in demand with the top symphonies in the world now. People are clamoring for his music as a vocal. He writes a lot of choral music, a lot for early music ensembles, pair his music with ancient music very often because it's got this ancient ethos there. For this piece, I could compare my music to white light, which contains all colors. Only a prism can divide the colors and make them appear. The prism could be the spirit of the listener. Like that last piece, I didn't realize that Für Alina had that sad connotation of this broken marriage, and it was written as a consolation for the mother. What's the role of that bass note that comes in once in a while? It's so profound when it happens because we spend so much time with those two notes back and forth in the same rhythms that when the bass note comes in, it's got a finality to it that always kind of moves me. Spiegel of Spiegel is different entirely. This is written for a solo string instrument and piano. And I always love a piano part that I can play. This is very, very simple music. But once again, it's incredibly carefully controlled. Now, just like the atonal music of Schoenberg is, everything is mathematically controlled. If you break it down, I can spend an hour breaking down the different cells that he uses to make this happen. But just listen to the, I think this version is not with score, so just let that wash over you. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's, I think, long, and I want to get to a couple more pieces, but this is his most famous one. It's got like 18 million views on YouTube, and it's got 18 million trillion hits on Spotify. It's been used in movies. It's really crossed the culture barrier between classical music and the world.
What's showing is the Für Alina still?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay,
let me reshare. And let's get rid of Für Elise. There's a thing with Für Elise, with Beethoven's Für Elise. That's kind of his model. We don't know who Elise was, but we do know who Alina is as a person. That's kind of interesting. Okay, here we go. I'm sharing this next score. And the version we're going to hear is he sometimes he doesn't even specify which instruments are to play his pieces. This piece doesn't have a specification, so it's usually violin or cello. I really like it with a cello player, so I'm going to play the cello version. Gives a lot of contrast with the piano.
It's still showing Für Alina on our screen.
Should be changing now.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Sure it's the right one. Nope. Let me get my link. Bear with me as I change pieces. Come on, Spiegel. I'm gonna find it again. Spiegel. Spiegel. This is many people's favorite Arvo Pärt piece. I'm going to stop there. This piece is a good 10 minutes long, and I want to have time for a couple more. But you can see, put this on, close your eyes, and just just touch the infinite. It just goes on in such incredible ways. It's not all the same. There's lots of things changing. And every time he gives you a phrase, he's giving you the mirror of that phrase after it. So it is a mirror in the mirror. He's obsessed with looping these pieces together and this material together in different ways. And here we clearly have that tintinnabuli voice on the piano, dun, 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 dun. And then the cello playing in mostly scale tones. Sometimes he displays the octaves and goes up or down the octave, so he's becoming it's not so rigid with his tintinnabuli. He's using it as a device, and you're going to see as he goes on with time, he uses it more and more in different ways. It becomes a very malleable device that can do a lot of different things, and he's constantly expanding. He's still writing music, and he's still expanding what's possible with that. I'm going to play you his, we consider this, it's like a concerto. This is for virtuoso violinist and piano or orchestra or cello. He leaves most of his pieces that can be done by almost anybody. It's really interesting. He just kind of says, you know, it can be done by whatever. And he likes to leave them open-ended like that. He doesn't like his pieces to be totally defined. Like, let's say Beethoven wants a string quartet or piano or a woodwind quintet. He says he leaves it open-ended. This one is going to be for piano and violinist. This is called Fratres, which means brothers. And you know, a lot of these pieces aren't carefully defined what they're about, and we have to use that prism to see what we hear in it. But in this case, you're going to hear a frantic virtuoso violin part, and then a peaceful kind of answer to that. And it's this kind of duality of man, this frantic versus and he takes it through, if you listen to the entire thing, he starts at a high-pitched level, and each of the cells gets progressively lower, which is very unusual. He takes the risks, and he does things for rhetorical impact. That's very important to him. And for him, it's all about faith. And you have to realize where he comes from. The Soviets severely repressed religion, and they severely repressed religious music. So when the Soviet Empire fell, Estonia and Eastern Europe came pouring with religious music and fervent religious music. People like Arvo Pärt by Piteris Vasks. These composers, there's many of them, and they came flooding out of Eastern Europe. And Pärt is one of the greats. And all of his music has a faith basis, even if the piece isn't religious. We're going to listen to the last piece to his Stabat Mater as we're in the season of Lent, and it's just remarkable. But let's listen to Fratres first, and that'll finish up his instrumental music. Pärt has written symphonies. Pärt has written like full symphonies. He's written concertos. He writes large scale and small scale forms, and he's equally a master at anything pretty much. He's attempted. So let me get the link for Fratres. There's Fratres. Sharing your way. Whenever I have a hard day, I put this on and it's like, you know what? It's not that bad. Here we go. Play along if you have your violin.
Can you hear something? I can't hear anything. I'm sorry.
A lot of black notes, but you guys can't hear me. Let me try that again. Shared with screen, with... He likes silence, but not that much.
Wasn't sure.
And we always joke around as conductors. We say, thankfully, we don't pay the musicians by the number of black notes they play. This piece has got a lot of black notes for the violinist. A lot of notes. Is it playing? Is the sound playing?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll leave the rest for you to discover, but that's an incredible piece of music. He keeps bringing back different variations and taking it through different, and like bringing the pitch lower, and it's just amazing. He finds incredible variety even within those tiny musical, that they're very narrow musical world. There really isn't a sense of harmonic progression, but in the earliest years of polyphony, at the beginning of the polyphonic period from the 1100s to like the 1300s, the harmony was born out of the motion of independent vocal lines. There was no sense of harmony as we consider it today. What we consider today chord progressions were born out of the experiments of hundreds of years of experimentation, and they just found formulas that worked, and that became our harmonic progressions. So he's just going back at a time where he's not basing them on progressions, he's basing it on the motion of individual lines. I just think that's amazing. The last piece I'm going to play, and I'll flash my last PowerPoint, because it has a Seton Hall relation. I'm delighted to have brought some of this music to Seton Hall, and that was the Spiegel im Spiegel. Sacred Minimalism at Seton Hall University. This is the Stabat Mater of 1985, and here's another great quote: "The human voice is the most perfect instrument of all." Arvo Pärt is really known for his vocal music, especially. Really, there's an incredible tradition of singing in Estonian, choral singing in particular, and Arvo Pärt has really advanced that. You may notice the picture of the chapel there. I did with the help of Monsignor Zaccardi, for the annual Lenten, I established the Lenten meditation series, the musical meditation series, when I came to Seton Hall in about 2012. And I've been doing one every year, bringing a piece, either an entire Stabat Mater piece for Lent, or a piece of or Stations of the Cross program where I vary it up. One year I decided to be crazy and have the chamber choir sing the Stabat Mater of Arvo Pärt, which is a 23-minute piece. And the students, they may as well have been dropping them into Mars, because this is not like music they would have ever experienced in high school. I've got students coming out of high school singing, pentatonics and coming to Seton Hall, and we're doing Arvo Pärt with orchestra. And when I say orchestra, there's three instruments. There's a violin, a viola, and a cello. That's the whole orchestration. And then there's three-part voice. The number 3, of course, being a very important number in Christian theology, right? The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, the Trinity reference, is there all the time. So now he pairs the voices with the instruments in an incredibly unique way. I'm going to play the opening of this. This uses descending scales in an A minor, and once again, there is no change of harmony for the entire 23 minutes, but he achieves an incredible amount of emotion, of variety of contrasts of styles between solo voices and choral sections. This is one of my favorite pieces. I'll just play the opening, and then I'll leave it to discover. This is on my YouTube channel. This is the Seton Hall University Chamber Choir. You'll see the chapel, and I'm so proud of them. There may be more tight professional recordings out there, but my students did a great job, and this style was so alien to them. By the end, though, I think everyone was just stunned at how beautiful the silence was of this music. So here you go. Let me get my link, and then I wish everyone a great day. Here we go. Copy. Paste.
We actually do have one question.
I'll take it before we go.
You want to do it now or after this?
Let's do it after this. I'll just play the opening.
Okay, good idea.
This was in 2018. Here we go. I'll start by saying the image of the Stabat Mater is the crucified Jesus above everyone, with the Virgin Mary looking up. So it's going to start at the highest register of the instruments. One thing about Pärt's writing is it's incredibly difficult for the singers. It's incredibly difficult for the performers. These are 3 of the best string players I work with. 2 of them are in the Lincoln Center Chamber Music, and one's a professor at Manhattan School of Music on the violin. I'll just start there. It opens and it closes with the same musical idiom, that beautiful, those descending lines. And then it goes through all the words of the Stabat Mater. Each one is set, like sometimes with solo, sometimes with chorals, sometimes with the strings, but with an incredible combination of different sounds. Even though it never changes harmony from A minor, it feels like you go on this incredible journey because he's a great composer. So I'll take any questions now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll put the link to that if you want to see the rest of that performance. I'm very proud of it. It's gotten over 1,600 views, and people around. I get people from Estonia who actually comment on, which is stunning to me. I have to translate it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we have a question from Christiane George. She said, there are no time. So she was following the score. She said there are no timing signals or loudness, softness markers. How does Pärt instruct the pianist that how this music is supposed to be played, or does he leave it to interpretation?
He leaves a lot of it to interpretation. The players can add a lot of themselves into this music. He never over prescribes it. He expects the best musicians. When the students sang this, it took us a long time to get comfortable with the idiom because it's so foreign, and it's really austere. And there's nothing that gives you your part. There's not a piano that gives you your notes, and the strings really don't play. They're not doing the same thing that the singers are. They're doing their own thing. They have their own rhetoric going, and the singers are on top of that kind of. It's like two different worlds, the divine and the sacred, back and forth in conversation. That's a lot of Arvo Pärt. You have to kind of, as a conductor, I spend most of my time at 3 in the morning wrestling with what is the composer trying to say. And if with him, it's never easy. It's never straightforward. It's always like, wow.
Oop, there we go. Oh, so thank you so much, Jason. I don't need to be sitting here live. Turn that off for now. No, turn it on, whatever. So we are finishing up, and I want to thank everyone who came and let you know that the video of this will be posted on the Center for Faculty Development site and in various teams' sites. It's all behind, basically behind Seton Hall's firewall, if you will. But Jason, if you'd like a copy of it, I can send you a link. So if you want to do something with it, if you want to put it on your YouTube channel or whatever,
Sure.
I can do that too. So I'll send you a link. It'll take a little while to work. It has to sort of download and I don't know what, buffer, all that fun stuff, but I'll definitely send it to you. So thank you. This was just amazing. It was amazing.
If anyone ever has a question musical, I love to be asked questions, so just reach out and find me, and I love to talk about music with anybody, whether it's rock and roll when we get to perform again for the talent show, or whether it's Arvo Pärt's minimalism. I just love it.
There you go. Thank you so much. Well, and thank you all again for coming, and have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you so much, Jason. This was just such a gift. I really appreciate you giving your time. It's a crazy time for everybody, but it's I know how much this was a labor of love, but still a labor. So
you know what? I spent a day listening to my favorite composer. It's about as good a day as it gets.
There you go. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to end this, and we will see you around. So take care. Hope to see you at our last day of events. Actually, next to last day, we have another contemplation event on Monday, which we had to reschedule from this past Monday. So take care, everyone. Thank you. All right.